Hello there, I'm Steve Malone, VP of Product Management at Egress. And today, in the next 10 minutes, we're going to look at how the people in your organization represent the biggest risk. We'll look at the evolving threat landscape, the current technology landscape, and then we'll look at some new strategies to help you mitigate those risks. So when I say the people in your organization are the biggest risk, what we're talking about is what we call human activated risk. Now, taking a look at Verizon's data breach incident report last year, or the DBIR, the statistic that really jumps out at me is this one. 85% of breaches last year in some way involved the human element, those people in your organization. And if you take a look at the graph on the right here, you'll see that these attacks and these breaches are exponentially growing. So risk is increasing. Now, when I talk about this concept of human activated risk, really I mean three things. First of all, people make mistakes. Everyone is only human. So human error, somebody in your organization sending an email to the wrong recipient, for example. We also mean malicious insiders. So those users in your organization who may want maliciously to exfiltrate data, potentially by email. And then lastly, people who are the victims of sophisticated inbound phishing attacks also present human risk to your organization. Now, while people are the biggest risk to your organization, email remains the most risky attack channel. Now, you've probably seen a slide like this before. I've presented this slide many times over the last 5-10 years, and you've probably all seen a slide like this before as well. And unfortunately, you'll continue to see this slide because email remains the easiest way for an attacker anywhere in the world to launch an attack against anyone in your organization. Now, the technology landscape has changed. And that's primarily been driven by Microsoft and the widespread and rapid adoption of 365. So cast your mind back 5 or 10 years, most organizations would have a mail server, likely on premise. And over the years, that Microsoft moved that on-prem infrastructure into the cloud with Exchange Online. Now, in the last few years, we've seen a huge uptick in the adoption of 365. And that's primarily been driven by a much bigger and more advanced feature set, as well as the fact that all of these services are available in the cloud. Now, that's caused a seismic change in the way that organizations think about protecting themselves and adding additional functionality, as well as security capabilities. So, back in the old days when organizations had their on-premise mail server, it made sense to overlay a secure email gateway. That secure email gateway, or SEG, provided not only additional security benefit, but also functionality as well. But now that Microsoft have really won the SEG battle, what we're seeing is that organizations with secure email gateways and 365 are suffering unnecessary cost and complexity in terms of the duplication of effort it takes to maintain all of those systems. There's another way, and this is the shift in the way that organizations think about email security. It's what Gartner term ICES, or Integrated Cloud Email Security. Forrester term these vendors as CAPES, so that's Cloud API Enabled Email Security. Essentially, in the ICES or CAPES models, technology like that from Egress can be plugged into 365 to essentially either augment or ultimately replace the secure email gateway. So filling up those security gaps while making use of 365's inbuilt capabilities for the more functional areas. Now, we're also seeing a dramatic shift in the technology landscape for the way that organizations think about security awareness and training. Many organizations make use of these security awareness training providers to educate or essentially train their users on security best practices. But as you can see from the graph here, the forgetting curve, which is a basic psychological principle, it's very difficult for people to retain information over time unless they are continually re-educated. Now, in the context of the workplace, that requirement for continuous training takes people away from their day jobs and ultimately forms a distraction. It also means that organizations have to change their security awareness training provider very frequently to keep the content fresh. So many organizations would prefer another way, and so would end users. Now, this is where Egress come in. So essentially, the way that we look at all of these problems is through the lens of human-activated risk. We're focused on protecting organizations inbound, so protecting against those inbound advanced phishing threats, but also we're focused on protecting outbound threats as well, so either accidental or intentional data loss by email, all through the lens of the human. And we're focused on doing that by being proactive in making our technology different. Essentially, if you're looking for a solution to protect your end users, think about one that is able to provide real-time teachable moments rather than that heavyweight security awareness and training. And I'll come on to that in a couple of minutes in more detail. It's really key that you have a solution that provides proactive detection and ultimately intelligent machine learning driven detection as well. It's critical that whatever solution you choose, either to augment 365 or replace the SEG, protects your users both inbound and outbound and makes that security work for both users and critically for administrators. So I want to give you a couple of examples. These are real Egress customers, anonymized here, but I want to tell you about their story. So this is an example of a large 10 to 12,000 seat customer where we provided inbound email security protection. So over a 30-day period, we processed around about 5 million emails inbound. Now what we found was that we detected around about 1,000 additional inbound phishing messages on top of those that Microsoft had caught. Now, while that number might seem fairly small, think about it in this way. That's 1,000 pieces of ransomware in that organization. That's 1,000 persuasive emails that are asking those users to transfer money to another bank account. That's 1,000 potentially unsafe websites visited. When you think about it in those terms, it's quite a large number. Now, the graphs on the right, let me talk to you about those because I've mentioned this concept of real-time teachable moments. So our technology introduces color-coded banners that aim to give the user information in real time about the security posture of the email they've received, using essentially core psychological principles of color to help the user understand whether a mail is safe or unsafe. And again, you can see here that when we measured interaction with emails before the banners were applied versus after those banners were applied, we saw an enormous, over 70% reduction in end users interacting with unsafe or potentially unsafe mails. Let's look at another customer. This is an example of outbound protection. So again, this data was taken over a 30-day period. Outbound, we examined around about just under 900,000 emails. Now, before we started working with this customer, we asked them, how many data breaches do you log in your incident register every month? And they told us around about 15. Over that 30-day period, what we found were actually 134 real data breaches that were caused by misdirected emails, that's sending an email to the wrong person, or a misspelled recipient. Now, often the email client, so Outlook for example, tries to be helpful by auto-completing email addresses, and it can often auto-complete to the wrong address. That essentially can cause a data breach. Now, in this customer, we also, working with them, set up policies to detect what that customer classed as data exfiltration. So this was data that they did not want leaving the organization. We also, over that 30-day period, found well over 1,000 incidents of data being exfiltrated, either accidentally, intentionally, or unintentionally. So as you can see, the real story of their data breaches was significantly higher. Okay, so key takeaways. It's critical that you are thinking about assessing the combined threat of both inbound and outbound email security risks. If you are using or thinking about moving to Microsoft 365, it's critical that you think about how to overlay proactive and smart detection. And lastly, think about the people in your organization. Traditional approaches to education will not work, so you need to think about how you can use real-time teachable moments to make your end users part of the security solution and not part of the security problem. Thanks for listening. Thank you.